Over the next 10 minutes, you're going to hear 3 separate journeys about people trying to find home. The first of these is a group of travelers from Illinois trying to find solace along the west coastline. The second, my boss from the camp that I worked at. And third, my gnome. The story of a college kid who, with some alright camera equipment, a computer that can handle some editing software, and a microphone, will try to define home for the rest of humanity and all those beings out there. It's a good idea, right?
I often tell this story because it kind of symbolized what America was about to become. And they were coming on in their canoes, coming down the Columbia River. They settled on an area called Dismal Niche. It was horrible. They ran around the alcove, all along, this is on the Washington side. And they settled on an area which they called Station Camp. There was no elk, there was no European ships. They were getting desperate. 33 hungry people on their watch.
There's never been a time in my life in which I didn't think I could come back to that little farmhouse just outside Halsey, Oregon. It's where I called home for the first 18 years of my life with my mom, dad, brother, and animals that I have loved.
I am kind of a transplant to Oregon. I've lived most of my 37 years in Tennessee. But even before moving to Oregon, I've lived away from my family in a way that's different than the way the family usually runs. Like my family, everyone, like cousins, aunts, uncles, everything, they live within like a 20-mile radius of each other. And I'm like one of the few exceptions that lived farther away than that. And I've always sort of felt like kind of nomadic.
Sometimes home isn't all it's brought up to be. Sometimes it's something sad, something hurtful, and yet it still grows us. I found a girl who I thought I was going to marry someday, and yet a year into our relationship she developed this depression that was just bringing me down and destroying me every single day. I wanted to look at myself less every single day because of this.
So he made a decision. But before he made that decision, he consulted with everyone. He asked them, as it states in the journal, November 24th, 1805. The stars and the moons are in this coordinate. 12 Chinook Indians came down and smoked with them. He never writes the question, just their answers. The question was, are we going to sit here on the Washington side and fight this winter storm out together? Are we going to go back down the river and look for shelter elsewhere? Or should we cross the river, as suggested by the clots of Indians?
So what else would I do than decide to move to college with her? This was a time in which I was desperate for answers. I was desperate for solutions. And Portland State, although she was depressed now, it looked like this was going to be the best future for us. We would go there for 4 years, it would be happy. And this is a time in which I should be working on myself, developing myself, and yet it seemed like the best decision. Home doesn't always make a lot of sense.
I'm happy when I'm moving, and I'm happy when I'm exploring. And that's kind of a hard thing to reconcile with yourself, especially when you start thinking about the idea of home, because home is something that's comfortable and something that you know. And so if you're happy moving and exploring, then how do you ever find a place that feels comfortable and familiar? And that's something that I've really been kind of grappling with since moving to Oregon. I've lived here for less than a year so far. And that's one of the strangest things, is that being in a place other than the South, it just doesn't feel familiar. And I love it, and it's beautiful, but there's nothing here that I know very well. There's nothing here that feels, that's a smell that goes back to my childhood, or a sight, or or anything like that.
So when the inevitable breakup came, I decided that it was time to move on with my life. This being the last week of my high school career, I just had to get through graduation, and then I would be on to a camp that I had gone to my entire life and loved with such passion. And when I got there, I found people that loved me and cherished me, and I cherished them back. And there was this relationship built at that camp that I hope to build on forever. This was my new home.
He asked everyone, including York, where at this time, the U.S. Constitution said a black man didn't have a place at the decision table. York, what do you want to do? York wanted to cross over. Do you know how good that makes you feel when somebody asks you for your opinion? He asked Sacagawea, what do you want to do? And her response was, I want to be near the potatoes. She didn't care where she lived. She wanted to feed her baby. She's a mother. They all came over and built the fort here and winter here for almost 3.5 months.
There's something really unique about the coast. It's never changing, and yet it's always changing. Every wave is different. There's no wave that's similar. And maybe that's the relationship I had at camp that grew me so much. Over those 3 months that I was working there, I was working around people that cared for me, cherished my life, and I cherished theirs. We were building something. We were creating lives that would soon affect the world anew, all in the name of God.
And so for me, I think the thing that I use to define home the most is a place that you choose to stop at. Because even if you're on like a backpacking trip somewhere and you walked for like 10 or 15 miles in a day, you pick your campsite, and a lot of time if you're in the backcountry, you just kind of walk up on a place and you're like, this is the place. And you're not really sure why you decided to do that, but you do. And you kind of make yourself familiar with that, and you get to know that. And so in some ways you feel like you chose home, but in other ways you feel like home chose you too. And I think there's an interesting kind of interplay there, that you both kind of choose each other, and you're not sure if it's going to be the place that you need to be, but you kind of commit to getting to know that and feeling more comfortable in that.
So have you ever found a sense of permanent in home, or is the idea of permanent not associated with home for you?
I don't know. I think I'm still figuring that out. I mean, really, for most of my life, I've lived in Tennessee, and so it's not really like I'm like this adventurer who's always like jet setting all across the country and everything. But I do kind of feel like this restless spirit, and anytime I get comfortable in a place, I have these urges to go somewhere else. But there is still that feeling that like whenever I go to my parents' house, there's something that I know really well about that.
Yeah, you're talking about the smell of your childhood or something.
Yeah. You know, like you go to like if I go through Kentucky in the fall, I know the smell of tobacco being cured in the smokehouses. And you know that smell of like the leaves getting crisp in the fall and falling from the trees, and when you go to a different place, it's slightly different. And so I think there's something to that too, though. There are these things that kind of get stuck in our blood, and we can't get rid of them, no matter how far we travel from that. And so anytime you go back, there's something there.
And yes, I knew it was coming. College was going to be here in no time, and now that I had dumped that other relationship and I was on to something new and amazing, I went to U of O. I found my place in the marching band. I started getting into outdoor clubs. I really started to grow myself here. And I plopped myself down at this little corner of 15 and Walnut that I now call home. It's something unique, something new.
And they also had relations with the Clatsop Indians here, trading with them. They were very, very kind of like, to my opinion, they viewed them as reality TV. They saw foreigners come here before, because in this area, this was the Silicon Valley of fur trade. So, but they never saw actual foreigners stayed and built something here. They would normally come out here, trade, and get back on the ship and go on with the next business. But they actually stayed here and put up that flag.
All of your travels, what's one thing that's always stuck with you?
That's a good question. There's something about the outdoors. When I was, the place where my parents' house is right now, it's like 50 acres of woods. And when I was a kid, I would just go and like get myself lost and see if I could come back. And I still, anytime I go out in the woods, I still kind of feel like that 12-year-old me, like going out and trying to find something and then trying to find my way back to it. And I guess maybe that's like a bigger metaphor for life.
Yeah.
Is like that there is this place where I was born and where I came out of, and in a lot of ways, like my life has been made from me leaving it and kind of trying to get myself lost and then seeing if I can find my way back to it.
That's just it. Home isn't something that's defined by a place. It's not something defined by a few walls and a sofa that you like to sit on. Home is a relationship. It's something built around the people that you find, the actions, the words, everything that you find in one place. And you think, you know what? I want to sit down here for a while. I don't know if my home is permanently going to be in Eugene. I don't know if it'll permanently be in the USA. I can only pray that when I get there, I will find people that I love, because that's what defines the place that I will grow.